What's up, everybody? It's Dan Greer with Leading for the Middle of the Pack, and today we'll be talking all about the power of silence as a leader. I know. Don't think Silence of the Lambs. We're not like, okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the power of silence. So a lot of people don't actually understand how good silence is at everything that you do and how that awkward silence actually will draw the truth out and will actually make you a better leader. So today, we're going to be chatting all about that. Cue up theme song. We'll be right back.
The big question is this: how are leaders, like us, who aren't necessarily in a management position, who go out and get our hands dirty, who are ready to answer their calling from God to lead, who are driven to learn and grow, gain the trust and respect of those around us, to actually be heard while not coming across as an authoritative prick? These are the questions, and this is the podcast that will give you the answers. Hi, my name is Dan Greer, and welcome to Leading from the Middle of the Pack.
Sweet! I'm so glad you guys are still here. Well, like I said, today we're going to be chatting all about the power of silence and why, active listening and being quiet is super important, as well as, just allowing time after a comment or a conversation to reflect a little bit on kind of what's going on. So let's dive right into this, okay? So the first thing we're going to be talking about is, whenever you get into these conversations with people, don't be afraid of the silence. Everybody is scared to death of silence. I've noticed this with job interviews. Whenever you're having a conversation with somebody, I'll pause for a second and they naturally fill it in. They'll start talking because that nervous energy is there. And I really like the people who allow that awkward silence to sit for just a moment and then come in. They'll sit for almost 2 seconds and then make a comment. Or I'll be doing an interview with them and I'll say, so what do you think about this? And instead of them just blurting out an answer they haven't thought about, they go, well, to be honest with you, I haven't really thought about that. But give me just a second and I'll formulate an answer for you, right? Do you kind of see how that silence really makes a big difference? So I used to be really, really, really bad at this, and I would actually jump on people and try to cut them off so there was no silence. They wouldn't be finished with their sentence, and I'd be like, oh, I can finish your sentence for you, right? And it just pissed people off because they felt like I was cutting them off. And actually, my wife was the one that brought it up to me. She's like, you never let me finish a sentence, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, you're right, I don't. Because as people, as humans, we feel smart when we know what they're talking about. And we want to show them that we know what they're talking about. But it comes across as not necessarily that we know what they're talking about, but we're trying to correct what they're saying. We're trying to show that we know more than they do, or we already know about this, and that's the way it's perceived to us. So think about this. If I come in and I said, you are the best person in the... You just finished that sentence. You either said world, or house, or family, or car, or wherever, right? It doesn't matter. My mind said world. But, but you see what I'm saying? You automatically finish that sentence because I left some silence there. Now, as a leader, it's okay to leave some silence there and to see how people answer. And that's one of the big things that I've learned lately is in leadership, in everything I'm doing with my kids, I'll do the same thing. I say, so what do you think about that? And kids are really good. They sit there in awkward silence for freaking eternity, because they're tuned out to the world. At least my kids are. It seems like you're like, so what do you think about that? Would you say something? You freaking kidding me? But just you get where I'm going with this, right? That was just humorous. But that awkward silence is really good. Now, the other thing that I want to tell you is this: is part of being silent is also listening. When your mouth is closed, your ears are open. When your mouth is open, your ears are closed. You can't hear anything. When you're talking, you don't hear what everybody else is saying because your mind, okay, before we talk about this, people can't multitask. Don't try to multitask. Don't be one of those people who's like, oh, I multitask like a king. Oh, it was so awesome. No, you can't multitask. You do one thing, you do it well, and then you move on. You don't do 20 things all at the same time and do nothing right. You have to do one thing. Think about this. How would you feel if I was doing this? We're getting sidetracked here, but I like squirrels and shiny objects. You know me. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So, how would you feel if I was doing this podcast and I was like, yeah, guys, things are really good over here. And I'm checking emails and I'm editing this video while I'm doing this podcast, right? And then I'm shooting a message while I'm doing this podcast. How would you feel? How would you feel? I'm not paying attention to you. I'm not devoting it to you. Would it be a good podcast? Would I be good at what I'm doing right now? The answer is no, right? What happens if somebody walks into my beautiful studio I'm in my basement right now. We don't have an office yet. Don't tell anybody. Okay. What happens if somebody walks down the stairs and they catch my attention? I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'm not really like, I get nervous because they're listening to me or watching me, right? Like, I'm not devoting what I'm doing to you. And actually, people have walked down in the middle of a podcast before, and you might catch me and look at them real quick, but I never stop what I'm doing. I always stay focused on you guys because that's what I'm here for. I've got my mind focused on one thing. And that's because I'm trying to focus on you. And so when I'm talking, we're circling back. Trust me, I told you I was going to circle back. When I'm talking, when my mouth is open, my mind is saying what's going to come out of my mouth. What's going to come out? And it's this constant loop. What am I going to say next? Where am I going with this? Why did you do this? Are you making sense? Right? All of that stuff. That's what's going through my mind. And it's saying, oh, boom, boom. So there's no way that I can read something, right? There's no way that I can read something and listen at the same time because my mind cannot be split. It can't do two things at the same time. It can do multiple things simultaneously once it figures it out, like chewing gum and walking or driving and listening to the radio once you figure it out. But like until you figure it out, you can't do that. And with leadership and with people, everything is always so different. It's always so unique. And so that's why you've got to have this power of silence. And the power of you being quiet is actually listening. So it's actively listening. So one of the things that comes into this is like, I know that you thought you're probably sitting here and you go, Dan, you're going to talk about the power of silence and how I should be quiet. And how I'm going to win everything by not saying anything. And I'm going to win all the arguments with my wife from now on. That's not what I'm saying. It will help you win arguments if you're quiet, though, and it will cause a lot less fighting if you just shut your mouth and listen for a little bit. But as a leader, right, we have to allow people to express their thoughts. We have to allow people to say, hey, this is my thought. This is what we should do. This is how we should do this. And it's our job to listen to them, not just think about how their idea is not going to work or anything like that. We have to actually listen to them and let them express it, and then we can have an open conversation with them about it. And as people, like, I would actually hope that you would teach this lesson as a leader is active listening, is that when somebody doesn't listen to you, whenever you talk to them, here's what I do. I will do this quite frequently, actually. This works really good. Is somebody will be having a side conversation over here, blah, 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 right? And I'm over here doing my thing, and I'll pause in the middle of a class. You know what I'll do? I'll just pause and I'll wait. And they'll go, what? Well, I was just waiting for you to get finished. I mean, everybody else paid to be here, and they don't want to be distracted with your crap and your side conversation, so I'm just going to wait for you. And then I'm quiet for like 15 seconds. And they get all nervous, and they get all ashamed of what they just did. My point is I didn't have to treat them bad. I didn't have to be a prick, right? I just got quiet for a minute. And they understood that I was quiet. But until I was quiet, they didn't understand they were doing anything wrong. I was in a training the other day. Honest to God, I was in a training, and the big boss got up, and he was talking, blah, 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 right? And he was, chest puffed out, and he was all doing his thing, walking around, strutting his stuff, and he was having his conversation. And one of his guys was over here having a conversation with somebody who was in the class. Like, we're all sitting around this U-shaped table, okay? And he's over here having this conversation with somebody who's in this class. And they're like over here, oh yeah, blah 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 blah, and he's over here talking blah 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 blah, right? And he's barking his stuff, and they're over here chit chatting, and they're not hearing anything because they can't hear anything that's going on, right? You can't be divided in conversation. You have to listen. And like I was like, oh my God, if I was that boss, I'd be like, gone. No, we got issues, man. Will never happen again. And I've had that conversation with some of my people like, no, you won't be rude. You won't do that. This won't happen ever again. You will be respectful. If you're not respectful, we will have words. Right? And that's the power of silence. It's actually listening to what's going on. It's not trying to do what you want to do or what you feel is more important. It's listening. It's taking time to listen. And as a leader, we have to take time to listen to people. Now, I've done this, and sometimes people will take advantage of you, and you have to be cautious of this. Because when they take advantage of you, it hurts me right here when somebody takes advantage of me, right? But I've had people take advantage of me whenever I stop to listen to them, and they use it as a reason not to work, or they use it as a reason to piss and moan, or they use it as a reason to give me excuses. And I don't tolerate excuses. I don't tolerate lies. I don't tolerate problems. You come to me with solutions. You come to me with the truth. You come to me with that kind of stuff. I'm going to have empathy to you. You come to me with a problem without a solution. I don't need that. I don't need those people around me as a leader, and so they don't stick around me. And actually, this is actually a whole other podcast. I'm going to write this down because I don't want to forget this. Why it's important. See, I told you, you can't multitask. Why it's important to make your group smaller. See, I can't multitask. I'm not listening to you. I wrote that down in the middle of a podcast, right? Like, that's crazy, but that's such a good idea. I got to write it down. So, the power of silence actually is really good. And if you notice, you'll be like, oh, I want to hear that podcast. Like, why do I need to make my group smaller? Why can't it be as big as I want it to be? Why can't it be bigger than it should ever, than I ever imagined it? The point is like, there's a lot of power in silence. There's a lot of power in listening, actively listening to other people. So let's talk a little bit about active listening. We're here. We're doing this. Let's get into this. What is active listening? What is it? It's when you actually listen to what somebody else is saying. Your mouth is closed and your mind is focused on them. I am hoping right now you're actively listening to this podcast. And I'll tell you, whenever I listen to books, I actively listen to those books because I want that information to be absorbed into this beautiful brain that God gave me. That way I can manipulate it and make it work. That way I can put it into play. I can take what I learned and I can put it into action. That's what I want. That's how I want it. That's how I want it to work. You getting this? Like, there's huge power in active listening. And as a leader, we have to be active listeners. We can't be constantly doing something else while somebody else is talking. Think about this. If I'm sitting here playing on my phone and you're trying to tell me a story, do you think I'm getting half of what you're saying? No. I might be getting half of it, but that's about it. I'm not going to be getting the whole thing. You might be telling me a story about how you sliced through the jungle and fought off anacondas and Burmese pythons and skewered a tiger or lion or a grasshopper that was the size of your foot. And, I got like 2 things of that. You know what I mean? Because I was in there playing on my phone looking at Facebook or TikTok or whatever. You can't multitask. Your mind doesn't allow you to multitask. God didn't design us that way. We're designed to do one thing and to do it well. That's what we do, and that's the way we're supposed to be. So active listening means you have to be quiet, but not only do you have to shut your mouth, but you have to open your mind and your ears to hear what's being said, and you can't be thinking about something else. Now, I will honestly say this, and I've had this conversation with people, and I'll be like, man, this sounds really, really important. My mind is extremely distracted. Can we have this conversation tomorrow? Can we have it this afternoon whenever my mind is not as clouded? And 99% of the time, people will be like, that's respectable. I appreciate that. Thank you for telling me that you're not mentally like prepared to have this conversation right now, or that your mind is too busy. Okay. Now that right there takes a lot of humility to do, because most of the time we don't want to admit that we're overwhelmed. We don't want to admit that we have a lot on our mind. We don't want to admit anything about it, but we have to do that kind of stuff. And so that's part of the reason. That's part of the reason why it's so important to be a good active listener, to be present in what you're doing. And we've talked about being present, right? So when we get into the power of silence a little bit more, whenever we silence our mind, whenever we silence our mouth, whenever we stop trying to answer people and we listen to listen, we've talked about that before. Something I've told my kids forever is don't listen to answer, listen to listen. That's active listening, okay? So one of the things that we can do with that is by listening, we allow some of that awkward silence to happen. Now, some of you are like, Dan, you've already said that allow awkward silence to happen. I get it, but I struggle with allowing awkward silence to happen. Like, I just want to fill in that thing. But here's the thing. Awkward silence is good. Let me say that one more time. Awkward silence is good. And you know why it's good? Because it's going to allow the mind to open up for everybody you're talking to. If you've noticed, this podcast has probably been a little bit slower than some of the other ones. But if you go back and listen to my other ones, whenever I say something, whenever I prove a point, whenever I'm going something I want to drive home deep, I'll pause right after I say it. And allows it to sink into your head. It allows you to go, oh, this guy's not so dumb. Oh, I get it. Oh, right? Yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of the guys on my team, and he's like, dude, the other day you told me something. He's like, you told me not to be afraid to separate, not to be afraid to like merge my work life and my personal life. And he's like, when you told me that, I was pissed. I was like, Dan wants me to bleed Eclipse DOT. He wants it to be my whole life. No matter what, that's all I'm doing. He's like, I got pissed. I thought that you were telling me that you only wanted me to be devoted to this and nothing in my personal life. He said, that's not what you were saying at all. What you were saying was that you wanted me to be able to blend them so that because I work remote, because I get hours that I can work whenever I want to, that if I want to work at 7 o'clock at night, I shouldn't feel bad about it. I'm single. I've got nothing but a dog at home. If I want to get my computer out and do some stuff at 7:30 at night while the basketball game's on, I can do it. I can do newsletters at that time. I can do emails at that time. I can do this at that time. I can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get some stuff done. Then I can go work out. And then I can come back. I can take an hour and a half off for lunch and then come back and do some stuff in the middle of the day. Like, I can work whenever I want to. That's what you're saying, is that I need to blend my personal life and my work life. Now, not everybody has that ability. But what he finally got when he allowed himself to hear it, okay, to begin with, he was not actively listening. He didn't allow the power of silence to creep in. He allowed his mind to scream at him when I said those words, no, be like every other idiot in the world and separate work and life and say you have to have a great work-life balance. You can't do two things. You have to separate it. Work sucks. Personal life is great. Bullcrap. Merge it. Make it all one. That's a whole nother podcast. I should write that down too, right? Merge it. Merge your personal life and your work life. And you're going to see your fulfillment go through the roof. Your success at work go through the roof. Your success at home go through the roof. I'm not telling you to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm not telling you to hate work and only love your personal life. I'm telling you that in today's world, 99% of us, maybe 90% of us, should be merging our work life and our personal life. We should be answering text messages after hours. We should be taking time for our family to go see our kids' performances at elementary school or middle school, or we should be going on a field trip with them once in a while and taking that time off work to go make it happen. We should be doing that stuff. That is the power of silence. That's the power of active listening. Whole different podcast, whole different thing. I'm getting distracted here. When this guy, when my team member, can't talk today, allowed himself to actually hear what I had said to him, he came back to me, and I actually just had this conversation yesterday. He came back to me yesterday, and he says, Dan, you are a freaking genius. He's like, I'm so much happier now that I actually heard what you had to say about merging my work life and my personal life. As soon as I actually heard it, these were his words, okay? As soon as I actually heard what you said, it's amazing. He's like, everything you say is gold. Everything you say is true. Like, there's nothing that you've given me advice-wise that's ever steered me wrong. He said, I don't agree with it at the time. 90% of the crap you tell me, I don't agree with. Within 6 months, I think, God, Dan's genius. What he tells is so true. Like, and he's giving me free advice. He's like, it's like having a $50,000 a year coach for free just because I work for him. He wants to see me succeed. He wants to see me happy in my personal life. He wants to see me happy at work. He wants to see me grow. He wants to see me make contribution. He's like, you want everything for your employees. You want them to like be ecstatic and to be excited to be here. You want that. And the answer is yes, I do. I do want that. That's the power of silence. He allowed his brain to be silent and to reflect on what was actually said. That is what I'm talking about with the power of silence. Allow yourself to actually hear what others are saying. If somebody says, oh, I don't think you should buy a plane. Why? Tell me why. Well, it's scary. Okay. Why else? Well, it's going to cost a lot. Okay. Why else? Well, I don't know. Right? I had a lot of people tell me that I was crazy. My mother actually said that I put the cart before the horse because I bought the plane before I had the license, but I guaranteed I got the license. I do crap backwards all the time. I'm not saying that I don't do crap backwards. She didn't say it to my face, but she was very sweet. I love my mom to death. I'm not talking any trash about her at all. She did a service for the local congregation and said that she kind of brought it up and she was joking about it. And she's like, yeah, sometimes we put the cart before the horse, just like my son bought a plane before he actually had a license to fly the thing. It's like, well, I get it. Like, I can see how people would think that. They don't take the same risks I take. I understand that. That's okay. Like I'm not upset with her. I could care less. Right? But I'm hearing what she's saying. Whenever I actually actively listen to her, she's worried for me that I might die in a plane because she's scared of it. People allow their fears to overcome you and to be you. And that's part of active listening. Just hearing other people's fears for you. Now, what you do with them is a whole different story. I'm not saying you got to like actually listen to them. I don't listen to 99.9999% of the people around me because I think considerably different than they do. And that's okay. I've got one guy who loved to death, super awesome guy, wants to invest in my company like nothing else, but we're not taking investments. We want to bootstrap this. And he actually got a little upset with me the other day. He's like, Dan, do you not want to be my partner? I was like, no, I would love to be your partner. And someday we will be partners. But this is mine. I put a ton of my blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. I've sacrificed so much to get here. I want to see if I can do it on my own without outside capital. I want to win. And I know I can. And I know we will. And I know we'll grow. I want to see if I can do it by myself. Now, our next business I build, I'd love to have a partner. When we start up our marketing thing, I'm going to have a partner in the marketing one. When we start up our software development business, I'm going to have partners in that as well. When we start up coaching, I'm going to have partners in that. When we start up sales training, I'm going to have partners in that. When we start up anything, I'm going to have partners. But I need to make sure that I shouldn't say I'm going to have partners in all of them. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm not afraid of partners. Partnerships are great. I love having partnerships. But my point here is, like, I'm not scared of partnerships. I'm not letting fear drive that. I want to make sure I can do it by myself. And by actively listening, he would get that. He would understand that. Right? A lot of times we don't actively listen. A lot of times we don't allow our mind to be quiet enough to hear what's actually being said. A lot of times when somebody comes in and they're super scared about something, they're upset, you've got to listen to them. You've got to figure out what the root problem is. People don't want to tell you the root problem. They want to tell you something else, and you've got to find the root problem. And that's part of the fun of being a leader, is digging and finding that and getting to the root cause of what's actually going on. And that's the power of silence. Quieting your brain, quieting your mouth, opening your ears, allowing it to wash over you, allowing it to be seen, allowing it to be there. That's the fun. That's the fun. Okay? So here's what I want to do. As I wrap this up, I want to encourage you guys to do 3 things. You know one of them. Like, subscribe, share. I know, that's 3 things, but it's all in one. Okay? Like, subscribe, share. Share this with some friends. Like it, subscribe so you get more podcasts. Download every episode. I don't even look at stats, so I don't know how many followers we have or how many are there. Like, I looked at it the other day, and we're in like 26 countries, which is super cool. I think it's 26. 18, 26. I don't know. I know there's a big difference there, but like, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't look at stats of this because I'm a little scared too. I don't want to see how good or bad it's doing. If it's bad, I might be like, oh, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to keep doing this. But anyways, the other thing that I want to say is this, is like, I want to encourage you to shut your mouth, open your ears, open your mind, and close down your thoughts. Don't listen to answer, listen to listen, be active listener. And the next thing I want you to do is I want to encourage you to include those powerful silences in your conversations and not be scared of the silence. Don't be scared of silence. Be excited for it, okay? All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and chat soon. Later.